Welcome, everyone. Thank you for joining us today. We're going to be talking about AI in internal audit, and we'll start with some introductions. Jamie, would you like to go first?
Thanks, Charlotte. I'm Jamie Crossman-Smith. I'm pleased to say I'm a career internal auditor. Formerly, I was Managing Director of Digital Data and Technology at Grant Thornton, and I left to set up my own boutique. So I now help internal audit functions and practices make the most of AI and help them make their businesses more efficient and more effective for the digital age.
And I'm Charlotte Kendal Parker. I'm a Senior Manager at DCR Partners. So at DCR, we support our clients to manage risk effectively, achieve their business objectives. And we do that by leveraging our core expertise in business change, technology, cyber, and data. And like Jamie, I'm also a career internal auditor. I've worked with clients of all sizes across all industries, and I've spent my career working in the UK and Australia. We recognise there's a lot of noise around AI right now, and so to address this, DCR and Bloch AI are working together to help our clients take practical steps to progress with their AI journey. And we'll be doing this via webinars like this one today, in-person briefings, and of course, we'll do hands-on support to address our clients' key opportunities. A few points of note. Today's webinar will run for an hour, including time at the end for questions. You can submit your questions through the Teams Q&A function, and you can do that at any point throughout the webinar. We'll come to them in the last 10 minutes or so. After the webinar, you'll receive a feedback survey to complete, and that will also give you access to the slides and to today's recording. In today's webinar, we're going to be focusing on helping you to understand where you sit compared to your peers, how you can advance your maturity, and to give you some practical tips and skills that you can take away to help you on this journey. And today's webinar is going to be the first in what will be a series exploring AI in internal audit. We'll bring it all together with a live demonstration towards the end of the webinar, so you can see a real example of how you can benefit from AI within your internal audit function. We sent out a survey last week to gauge how you're using and thinking about AI at the moment. The results show that there is some variety in terms of how actively AI is being used within your teams. Some of you are getting ready to start, others of you are well progressed along the journey. There are some common aspects, and we'll touch on all of these today. So, for example, all of you who've responded have at least a somewhat clear vision for how AI can support your objectives, which is a really good starting point. And most of you have teams who are already starting to develop those AI skills. So what does AI maturity look like? Jamie, you're on mute.
That's better, thank you. I don't know about you, Charlotte, but I've worked with a lot of different firms, big and small right now, and I can say that most firms are at the start of their journey. And I know I'm going to talk about some of the big firms in a moment, but I think that's your experience too, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. And so what we've done is put together an AI maturity framework, and we've got these 5 different levels as you advance up the ladder, and we're going to step through these. Most teams that we see, and Jamie, I know kind of the same for you, are in the early experimentation phase, and this might resonate with a lot of you on the call today. So that looks like you might be using AI tools for first drafts of documents, scopes, reports. Maybe you're planning an operational resilience review and you're asking ChatGPT to help build you a scope. You're probably also using AI tools for ad hoc queries for research and analysis. I'm sure a bunch of you have been asking questions like, what are the hot topics for internal audit in 2026, for example? And the defining characteristic at these earlier stages is individual experimentation rather than team-wide adoption. As we move up, teams are starting to embed AI. Some of you are at this stage already, and what that means is you're building AI into your standard processes. You're probably defining some specific use cases with good governance. So, for example, you might be building or have built a tool for reporting that you've trained in your reporting style. And so you're getting an output that requires minimal stylistic changes. And fundamentally, at this level, you're training teams on how to use AI effectively. At the top of the ladder, we're seeing highly skilled teams building custom, complex tools and agents. Jamie, do you want to kind of run through some of the good examples you've seen here?
Yeah, so the big organizations with big budgets and big teams who've been leading the charge in data analytics over the years are also unsurprisingly leading the charge in AI. Now those teams moved away from, many of them anyway, moved away from doing ad hoc analytics on audits to more building tools for their firms, for their teams, tools that help them do routine tasks or automatically. And AI obviously has been the next iteration of that anyway, because we know that AI can really help with automation. So I've seen a number of different tools out there, different applications that have been built, but the two that really stand out as quite innovative. Number one, a large bank showed me a QA bot. That QA bot would look in real time at the work papers that had been done. So every time you'd save it, etc., it would look against the corpus of information it had about the audit, the standards, etc., and say, have you considered this? Have you considered that, etc. On top of that, another really clever use of AI I've seen is a walkthrough bot. Now, I know doing a really good technical walkthrough of a system can take quite a bit of time, because you've got to prepare for the call, you've got to get your questions put together, you've got to start thinking about taking screenshots, you've got to follow up, etc. So anything an audit function can do to help streamline that process is going to be great. So this organization that I'm working with, what they did was they basically worked out how you can transcribe calls within Microsoft Teams, which we all can do, but then take that transcript, take the screenshots, and then automatically draft your first draft working paper of that walkthrough. Presumably it was done on Teams, of course. But let's be honest, most people are these days. And that is a very novel use of AI, and that is quite clever to do. So kudos to that organization. But I think for those of you who are earlier on in your journey, don't worry, there are still things that you can do with AI really easily, and you can start now with some really simple tips, which we'll show you later in this webinar. Charlotte.
Thanks, Jamie. So like to kind of take a step underneath what those maturity levels look like, we can frame AI adoption and implementation against 5 critical pillars. So starting with governance and strategy, what the best teams are asking is, where do I want to get to in the next 2 to 3 to 5 years? And how can AI help me to do that? What you don't want is to be driven by everybody else is using AI or talking about AI, I should be too. And alongside this strategy, you need to have right-sized governance. AI does introduce new risks, and we do need to know it's being used responsibly, but the right sizing is really important there.
I was going to say, Charlotte, I think that's right. There's a lot of shiny brochure syndrome out there. Everybody's doing AI, therefore I must do it, and people rush in, and it isn't just in internal audit; it's across the board with the mid-market firms I'm working with, etc. So they see a tool, they want to implement it. That is not the right way. What you said was exactly the right way. Where do I want to get to anyway, and how can AI help me with that?
Yeah, absolutely. And when you've kind of worked out your governance and your strategy, you want to then start building your capability in your teams. So when we think about training, it's not just how to use tools safely, but it's also how to get the best out of them. I think that's a really important part of this. And a lot of it comes down to prompt engineering, which we will go into detail later. But Jamie, this is your favourite topic.
It is, and I'm really looking forward to talking about it a little later. And I've spent most of my engagements over the last year have been training professional services teams in this, and it's really not hard to get it right, but you've just got to change your way of thinking about what a computer is and how it can help you, essentially. But once you get through that, it's fine. And I'm quite excited about prompt engineering, because it is the new code. It is going to, writing English or your first language of choice into a chat model is going to be the code of the coding capability of 2030 and beyond, without a shadow of a doubt. So that's going to open up people to be able to build a lot more exciting stuff and do it themselves, rather than have to wait for a data analytics team in the case of audit, or an external dev team to build something. So I'm looking forward to talking about that later, Charlotte.
When we're thinking about infrastructure, Jamie's already mentioned that kind of shiny brochure syndrome, that kind of temptation you might have to think, that looks great, I need that. And I think in AI, there's no shortage of tools that people will try to sell you or people will be talking about. And certainly we're going to kind of run through a bunch of them today. But what's really important with infrastructure is you are picking that solution that works right for you, something that your team can actually run with and use. And you can start small and build up from there. We're going to run through a few, and our demo today is going to be using really accessible tools that you can just use to start to get that innovation, build these examples, start to build agents that's going to really make a difference without overwhelming you with something that's kind of really fancy and it's got all the bells and whistles that actually, in reality, are people going to use that much?
I think spot on. And I think, and we'll talk about the different models are better for different purposes, but they're all in a race to the top at the moment. And so you'll find the ChatGPT or some new application comes out that produces some brilliant new feature and benefit, and you think, oh, well, I've got to go for that. 5 minutes later, the tool that you had before has actually come out with the same thing. It's not about the infrastructure at the moment. It goes back to what we said about earlier about actually just thinking about what you want to do as an organization anyway, and then thinking about a sensible plan and being measured and not rushing into getting taken away by the latest hype. But the hardest thing I've always found to change in any project that I've ever run is culture. Is culture, Charlotte.
Yeah, and I think with culture, if you want people to be able, if you want your teams to have the benefit from AI, which for a lot of it, we're talking about building custom tools and custom agents, that takes experimentation and it takes some failure as well. So people need to kind of have the culture where they feel like they can, experiment fast, fail fast. And they also probably definitely need the time and space carved out to be able to do that. But saying that, it might be tempting to go down the route of letting junior people in the team kind of play around. What can you come up with? Often, the kind of junior people in the team are the ones with the kind of new ideas because they're not as they've not spent as long doing things in the kind of the one standard way and have like the right way and the wrong way to kind of unlearn. But without senior buy-in, that can often fail. So, the best way to approach innovation and ideation, this applies to AI, but it applies more broadly. So probably sounds very familiar. Have senior people carve out that safe space, set clear direction, and give teams the support they need. So, an example here, kind of talking about QA, because leaning on your example earlier, Jamie, if 75% of your audit files are failing a QA assessment, set someone in the team the target of building a QA bot using AI and the time to work through that. And that way, as leaders, you frame the question and you set the direction. And one way that I've seen this done really well is to have the team come together to workshop problems and ideas, pick one that wants to be explored, nominate a few individuals to take that away and to develop, and then present the results back to the team and help to kind of fine tune it that way. And there you're getting full team involvement. Everyone's kind of learning and going on the journey. And what you're doing kind of comes back to having that direction and it being a solution to solve a problem, which we'll go into a little bit more later as well.
Yeah, agreed. And, I've made this mistake several times in my career, is you think it's easy to let a team of junior people or get a team together to start ideating and building stuff, but you as the leader can sit back and wait for it to happen. Two things happen with that. One is if you sit back too far, you lose control a little bit. And you can't. They don't necessarily get the support and the buy-in from across the firm because you're not there to give them it. If you lean in too much, especially as leaders, it's hard to start. It's hard to resist controlling it and shaping it by your agenda, especially with more junior people who are very susceptible to everything that you say and hang off your every word. So that the leader's role around this is really important. You've got to get that balance right of not letting nature take its course and not interfering too much, but making sure they've got the support. So it's a lot easier said than done in practice. Which brings us on to another topic and that's just within your team. What about the rest of the firm and integration, Charlotte?
Yeah, so when we're thinking about integration, once you've started to integrate, that's probably the signal that you're moving beyond that experimentation level and moving into embedded, because you're thinking about how you can integrate AI across all the different things that you do. So within the internal audit function, you want to think about the entire internal audit lifecycle, strategic planning, audit delivery, QA, and the payoff there is like freeing up time so you can focus on the things that really matter and that kind of strategic alignment and objectives. But beyond that, how do you integrate with the business? So, as the 3 lines of defense, what can internal audit do to help the rest of the business come along the journey? So how can AI help the 3 lines of defense work together to provide a kind of a consolidated view to senior leadership on risk management across the organization? You might be in a business that's dragging its heels as well, in which case what you can do in internal audit is really step up to the plate. And if you're waiting for the business to implement technology, be at the table and help them to make that change happen properly.
I've seen lots of different organizations tackle this problem before AI for a long time. So, for example, across the 3 lines of defense, we think about data programs that your firm is undoubtedly putting in place. And then the question comes is, why don't we have an integrated 3 lines of defense? Why don't we agree what the first line, the second line, the third line is actually going to be responsible for, and share and trust each other? And sometimes you find that that's driven by internal audit. Sometimes you find that's driven by different parts of the firm. It's just exactly the same with data. I've seen internal audit teams champion across the entire firm to go, we need better data, and so do you, because look at all these audit reports, let's get it done. And sometimes I've seen internal audit be a follower. So I'm going to wait until, pardon me, the infrastructure is in place, and then we're going to follow from that. That's, at the end of the day, guys, that's your organizational culture and what you feel comfortable with. But neither of those things are really wrong. The only thing I'd say is make sure you stand up as an internal audit function for what you want, and you can champion that across the firm. And if you want to go faster than the rest of the firm on AI, and it's safe and sensible to do so, then do it. And also on top of that, if you need to needle and push your IT teams or whatever to help you, then again, there's nothing wrong with that. It's all up to how you see your role within the firm that you work with.
So it's probably helpful to start with some practical steps. How can you set up the right foundations? And as auditors, we tend to be quite risk averse, particularly around things like data confidentiality. We don't want to release sensitive or commercial data into the public domain through kind of public access tools. So as leaders and as internal auditors, we need to be comfortable that risk is being managed, ensure our teams know how to use AI safely, and we need to give teams confidence and skills to develop solutions. We can do this with that right size governance that isn't onerous and starts with your AI policy. You can make sure that it's answering questions like, do you have any approved tools? Are the tools the right ones based on your strategy? Is it clear how they can and can't be used? Are the tools ring-fenced to your organisation, or are they in the public domain, which again impacts what you can and can't use them for? And a really critical element to this for using AI is human review, because AI can get things wrong. And we've probably all seen examples of this. One that sticks in my mind was asking ChatGPT for a summary of the global internal audit standards. And I got a write-up that had a bunch of hallucinations in it. So you should treat AI like a junior person on your team, review the work and prepare for it to be wrong. It's a fundamental aspect how you interact with AI, and you need to incorporate it within your policy.
Yeah, I agree. And, I think the most important thing is what you've said at the end there, is make time by investing time. This is something that I've learned from practice, for example, is that in practice, obviously we very much work on a time and materials basis quite often. And if we want to come up with a proposition, or we want to come up with something that's different, we'll we'll piggyback off an existing job, and then we'll incrementally improve it on the next job, etc. We've always got that bigger idea, and there's nothing wrong with doing that in practice. So, for example, if you wanted to build a QA bot, what prompt can I create now today as part of this audit that's going to help me QA and review my files? And then the next audit comes along and it's right, well, I've got a prompt that works. Let's see if I can tweak it and make it better on this audit. Do it as part of that budget. And the next audit comes along and you think, well, actually, how can I start to automate it? Because I'm having to manually add all these documents and change it every time and so on and so forth. Until eventually you actually get a product like the big teams. There's nothing wrong with doing that. It's just about reshaping and rethinking the way that you manage your time a little bit within your audit team.
Absolutely. And one of the best things that AI offers is a no to low cost way for you to build agents and tools without needing to bring in specialist knowledge like a coding language, which brings us nicely on to Jamie's 3 C's.
My favourite subject, okay. Thank you, Charlotte. Pardon me. So, the amount of times I go into organisations and I see people write one word, one sentence prompts, and they expect it to give you the right answer, and it doesn't. They get frustrated. Some of you take that by the horns and learn a little bit. Some of you think, right, I've seen some of you think, right, well, AI is not for me, it's rubbish, I'm not going to do it. I was trying to rack my brain around why people do this. And I think it comes down to the fundamental, AI is different to fundamentally how we've ever used computers in the past. Computers are deterministic, right? So for example, if I'm going to predict whether I'm going to give somebody credit in a financial services institution, there is a very formulaic way in the background. All right, there's some algorithms and stuff in there, but at the end of the day, you know what outcomes are going to come out with. It does this, and it does this, and it does this, and it gives you a score and a decision, yes or no, okay? AI is completely different. It's probabilistic. It works just like the human brain. And so, got to think about computers slightly differently. And the analogy that I make on my courses is quite simple, right? Imagine you're dealing with a very, very clever junior member of staff that's just come in, like a grad, for example. They've been to uni, they may have a PhD or a master's. Their brain is full of really great theories and ideas. They're like a big encyclopedia, but they know nothing about your business. They know nothing about audit. They know nothing about politics, whatever else. And I remember my first job, despite all this, I was making the tea, right? And I think, I think that's a very, very useful analogy. So when we prompt an AI, we've got to think about we're talking to a person like that, right? I've got to give it the context. I've got to explain things to them. You are an internal audit. It's your job to write this report. It's a difficult internal situation. The CEO is supportive, but the rest of the board isn't, blah, blah, blah. If you explain the context, then it allows the AI to fill in the gaps, right? Because you're not going to be able to explain everything in one prompt. But if you explain the context, the AIs should be clever enough, the bigger models anyway, to figure it out. Then you've got to give it clarity on what you actually want the AI to pump out. Okay, so be very specific in directing your instructions. I want an internal audit report. It should be set out this way, so on and so forth, right? And in that, you can even tell it, and I fully recommend this, fully recommend you to be able to tell it how you want it to think. Go and research this piece of legislation on the internet. Distill all the key points. Come back. Read my working papers. Come back. Distill it all together into an executive summary, whatever that might be. But the way that is useful to do that is to think how you would do that as a person, how you would do that as an auditor. And after all, that's what you tell a more junior member of staff that you're coaching on the job, isn't it? And then finally, there's constraints. I often get sick of typing in one sentence prompts into ChatGPT and getting all this emoji rubbish that I don't want, and something that's over summarized and something that's about 10 pages long when it's just like, give me a sentence. And again, that's no different to some people that you probably all work with like I do. Actually, ChatGPT, I want one sentence or I want one paragraph, and I want it really simple and I want it really easy. So constrain it. Be very clear on how you want your outputs, your word limits, the tone, the pitch, etc. Constrain it. And if you follow those 3 things, you're going to get a much better output. Now, as I said before, just because you write all this down doesn't mean it's going to come up with the right output. but it's like an investment. So if I write a prompt to help me create an internal audit report, for example, I get something using the 3Cs that's pretty good. I can say, well, I'll tweak this little bit of the prompt, see what impact that makes. So for example, I wrote a prompt the other day in a workshop in Copenhagen to make sure that there were no M dashes. You know, there's annoying little lines that ChatGPT puts in across every report that you want to do, because it's quite clear it's been written by AI, and I'm sure that's really proper English, but nobody ever actually really uses it in practice. So I asked it to remove it, and it appeared to not do it. It got rid of some of them, but not all of them. And that was because it hadn't realized that some of them looked like M dashes, but they weren't. They were something else in English that was a Geordie I don't understand. But it didn't appear to remove all of them. So I had to explain to it, remove the M dash and anything that looks like an M dash. And then I got it right. So feel free to iterate around your prompts, because if you iterate around your prompts, you're going to get something that's right. And then you can put it in your back pocket and keep it for the next report, and the next report, and the next report.
Yeah. And look, I think it sounds so obvious, but like when you've written a good prompt, save it down. So you're not creating from the beginning every time. I mean, I've got a whole list of things that I keep now after we've had this conversation, and Jamie's kind of taught me about his 3Cs, and I just think it saves you a lot of time, and that's what we're trying to do, right? Like that's where we're trying to get to with AI. So onto some tools. Different tools are designed for different purposes. This isn't an exhaustive list. You'll be familiar with some of them. You might be familiar with all of them. A lot of them have free versions that you can play around with. And we wanted to include this here just to kind of give you a sense of a little taster of what's out there. Jamie's walked us through the importance of a good prompt. You might have personally discounted tools or thought this is taking more time than doing it the old-fashioned way. And there's something about how different tools work for you and finding a really good fit for you. So personally, I've been using Claude a lot more for my own research. I started with ChatGPT like almost everybody else. I've pivoted to Claude, and I'm finding that, you know, the same prompts in both tools give me outputs that are much closer to what I'm looking for in Claude. And that all comes down to personal preference, and just a bit of playing around and figuring out, you know, trialing what's out there, finding the good fit for you.
Yeah, again, let's extend that analogy a little bit more about the 3Cs and helping people understand the context, the clarity, and the constraints, and speaking to it like it's a new person in your team. Just like everybody that's new in your team, for example, anybody that's in your team, members of your team will be better at other things than others. So, for example, when I started off in external audit, which is why I ended up in internal audit, I really liked those control evaluations, the ISO 315 flow mappings that we used to have to do before every single before the year-end audit. That was it. So I used to want to do all of those, and I couldn't be bothered with ticking and bashing creditors and debtors. It just wasn't good for me. But other people really like that. And models are exactly the same. So you'll find that ChatGPT, Claude, Perplexity, Gemini, and Copilot all have their strengths and their weaknesses. And you'll find what works for you, because there'll be a natural way that you talk to these tools and they understand you and they help you produce the outputs. Now, I'm just like you, Charlotte. I prefer Claude, but I don't use Claude for everything. I find that Claude doesn't always cope with everything that I want. It's pretty good at writing it out. It's pretty good at articulating it. I fully recommend Claude for things like copy, articles, reports, etc. It's really good at that. But I always use ChatGPT to scaffold things in advance, because I feel that it does the research better and comes up with the key concepts that Claude doesn't quite do. But it's a race to the top, and they're all iterating and incrementing their solutions, and one day you'll log on to ChatGPT and find that it's better than Claude at one thing, and the next day you'll log on to Claude and they've made a mini release and it's caught up, and so on and so forth. Perplexity is really good for research. I use Perplexity every day. I use it as a validation tool. So when I'm building automations, for example, and somebody's created a report or a copy of some sort, Perplexity is really good at fact checking it. So I recommend anybody have a good look at Perplexity. Copilot's an odd one. Many people have given up with Copilot. I'm not entirely sure that's the right way to think about it. For many of you around the table today, Copilot is going to be your only choice, right? Your organization will not allow you to use ChatGPT, not allow you to use Claude Perplexity, and so forth. Frankly, I think that's a bit of a shame. And Copilot is your only thing. And you've probably typed stuff into Copilot and thought, well, it's not as good as ChatGPT, so it's no good. The analogy is it's like a car, right? ChatGPT is the Rolls Royce, Copilot's your Skoda, or whatever it may be. The lights have gone off in here. Skoda, or whatever it may be. It will still get you A to B. It might not be as pretty, it might not be a bit more bumpy, but it will get you there. You've just got to learn to rev that engine a bit harder. Copilot's exactly like that. For those of you that didn't know, Microsoft essentially own a fair chunk of ChatGPT in some way, of OpenAI in some way. It's all quite complicated, and it's worth a listen to on a podcast, on the Economist podcast, if you're into that sort of thing. But as a result, Microsoft will have access to all the ChatGPT models in private on their own infrastructure on their own. So you can use the Azure OpenAI service, and I've put this in for clients before, where basically they're getting exactly the same model as ChatGPT. They're just getting it in their own secure environment, so they can use their data confidently and with security as well. And finally, if I look through the rest of those tools on there, for example, if I think about the future and I think about where AI is probably going to make a big difference outside of all this chat functionality, is the workflow automation tools. They're really, really good. I use N8N on a daily basis now to take inputs, process them using AI, and output them somewhere. And that could be from a web page, could be from a repository of some sort, like a filing system, it could be from a form, whatever it may be. Pulls that information in, processes it, puts it in the format that I wanted. All those three tools are good. I use N8N, but Make and Zapier are great too. And what's been really...
We could go through all of these, couldn't we? We could kind of talk about all the tools for a long time, but I think what the kind of message to take away is there's loads of things out there. This obviously isn't everything, but just, ask ChatGPT about some of the different tools. It'll give you this. And just have a play around and see what's out there. And kind of that brings us on to our kind of next slide. And this is the final slide before we get into our live demo. How do we develop an AI solution? And so you want to follow the same logic you'd apply to any other investment in your team. Start with your objective. What problem are you trying to solve? Why? Dig that bit deeper into it, and then you can move into ideation. Understand what your desired output is. Understand what information you're going to need to build it, and then you can build your example. So when we're talking about playing around in the tools, there's a bit of kind of knowing what's out there and kind of what fits you, but remember to start with the problem. Don't jump straight to the solution. When you're using AI to build something, you want to do it with purpose, not just because everyone's talking about it and you feel like you should do something. You want to make sure that you're getting really, really good value out of it. And I think the thing with AI is, like, historically, if you wanted to build a custom tool for your function, you'd need someone who understands coding languages, and you'd be investing resources, bringing in external expertise early into the process. So you'd be spending money before you were getting close to a solution. Yeah. And a lot of internal audit teams just don't have the budget to be putting out a lot of custom tools that are going to kind of make a difference to how you're working. So what AI can do is it removes a lot of the barriers, so you can get to that endpoint cheaper, quicker, with skill sets you've already got in your team, and you can get all the way to building that example, your proof of concept, or even your kind of your end product, really, with what you've got in your team already. And at that point, if you want to formalize and roll something out, that's when you want to just think a bit more thoroughly around governance, training, rollout plan. And at that point, maybe bringing in some software developers to kind of firm something up if you've built a complex agent. But you've managed to get all the way across that journey with your team's existing skill set. And I think, Jamie, you've been saying to me, AI is still tomorrow's technology. We still don't know exactly how we're going to use it. And we also have to think of it like a human. I know we've kind of touched on that a few times before, but going back to that prompt creation, explain exactly what you want it to do, be really, really clear, start small and scale up. So explain your task really clearly, give it a narrow scope as much as possible, build, develop, have your idea, review the outcome, and then refine it as you go.
Yeah, I think that's right. I mean, there are people out there that are using it to write university essays, and the quality isn't particularly great, although it's improving, and it can do it, but it's not the best. It's just like that graduate, right? You've gone out, learn all this stuff, really clever, but then you start making the tea basically. Give it really simple binary problems to solve. Don't get it to write an entire audit report from scratch. Like I was saying around NAN and Zapier, just give it really small problems to solve at each time. So give me the executive summary and then give it a small amount of data to be able to do that, and give it really context clarity constraints to do that, and go on and so forth. Give it those small problems and it will do a champion job for you. Charlotte.
I think that brings us on to our live demo.
Does it? Excellent. Let me share my screen. So this is always the embarrassing bit where you can see everybody's emails and stuff. So that sounds good. Right. So as we've said in earlier in this session, I often go into work with people, and it is that shiny brochure syndrome. I want AI. I want to use it. I've seen this. I want that. Stop. Right? You've just thrown money after bad. What is it as an audit function you actually want to do? What are your objectives over the next 6, 12, 18, 24 months, whatever that might be? And then once you understand what that is, how does then AI work through that? So we will share this canvas with you afterwards. It's on Miro. We'll share the link. All the stuff that you need is here, so you can start to see how you use it. But this is a simple canvas that helps you really understand what your goals are, what you want to do, the resources that you need to do it, and most importantly, the hard bit, the culture changes and the people changes that you need to get there. So let's say, for example, my audit function, its number one priority has been hitting its EQA. It's got to improve its audit quality scores, and it's got to increase methodology compliance to 95%. So we stick those in big writing in this strategic goal, because that's where we're aiming for, and that's why it's at the end. And then we start to think about that left to right side of things. So we know where we want to get to. Where do we start? Well, most organizations I've worked with tend to have quite strong leaders, and they already have very strong views on what they want to do. So when I've filled this canvas out in the past, it's quite easy for people to be able to get to this stage. They know where they want to get to, and they know what they want to do about it. So for example, the example we're going to take you through today is how to build and audit a very quick and dirty audit methodology chatbot, so your team can chat with your audit methodology instead of having to read through 20, 30, 40 pages and not find the right answer. So as an audit function, I want to improve my quality. How do I create value for my internal clients? Okay, well, you know what? If I standardize my audit approach, that might help, because if I standardize my audit approach, then people aren't going to feel like they're going to get an easy ride on one audit, a hard ride on the other audit. Everybody's going to get exactly the same outputs in exactly the same way, and that's going to improve the way that I deliver for my clients. So we put that on a card there. Then, and I will zoom in a little bit more because I appreciate this is quite hard to see. Then if I think about, if I want to standardize my audit approach, well, what tools, people, and budget do I need? If I want to standardize my audit approach, maybe I'm going to need some SME time to document best practices. Maybe, if I want to provide clearer, more actionable findings, which is something, again, that's in one of those yellow stickies, I'm probably going to find out what a good finding is and how my auditees actually use that. So why don't I do some research? Okay. So that's the next step. So I know what I want to do. I know what I have to do next, but then what's the behaviors and cultural changes that I need to do be able to do that? So even if once I standardize my audit approach and to allow us to provide clearer, more actionable findings, auditors need to be able to see standardization as quality improvement, okay, not constraints. They don't, auditors, I know certainly, there's part of me that always used to laugh at the methodology police, the auditors of auditors. I just want to do a good job. So you've got to make sure you bring your people along with you. And so that's the hard bit there. So here you've got the entire chain that's almost ready to lift and shift and put that into a plan to help you deliver your 2 outcomes names. So we haven't got time to go through the rest of them, but you can see what they are. And the way I go through clients is, what are the 4 lenses you need to think about? Client value, how I deliver value for clients. Risk, how you manage what can go wrong. Teams, your people and their capabilities. And operations, how you deliver efficiently. Now, most of your AI solutions will probably fit into here. Now, so far, as you can see, we haven't mentioned AI at all. Operations, build an audit methodology chatbot. And you will see that there's a whole load of dependencies here in terms of, well, I'm going to have some tools, I'm going to have to get a knowledge base, etc., and all the rest of it. Have a look at that and see what you think, and see if you can adapt that to your team. Well, let's have a crack at building that audit methodology chatbot, because I want to show you how easy it is. Copilot. As you can see now, this is Copilot, and Copilot is available to you in some form. It doesn't matter whether you pay for the £30 a month tool or whether you just are a standard Microsoft subscriber. It's available to you in some form. What people can do, though, regardless of whether you pay or not, is you can create a bot. You can create an agent. So today we're going to create that AI methodology bot. Now, for those of you that are eagle-eyed, I'm always got one I've prepared earlier, which I will go into just in case I need it.
Very Blue Peter of you.
Sorry?
Very Blue Peter of you.
Yeah, there's one I've created earlier, but let's try and create it from scratch. So this is your web view of Copilot. If I go to Create Agent, if I go to Configure, then I can start to build my agent. So I'm going to create a methodology bot. I'm going to describe my agent. It helps auditors. My agent helps auditors understand their responsibilities under our audit. Make sense? So the instructions section, and I'm going to spell methodology right. The instructions section is where you actually type how you want the bot to behave, and that is just a prompt. That's all it is. So I'll go on to that in a moment. I'm going to create some knowledge. I'm going to add some knowledge here. So what is the information source I want to use so my methodology bot can get the information I need? Well, I need my audit methodology. So let's upload it from the from my file. So in here you will see. Thank you very much, the UK government, for giving me this. Milton Keynes City Council Internal Audit Manual, because it's publicly available on the web. So let's use that. It's not a bad document, actually. You can see it's loading in the meantime. While we do that, you will see there's a box here: prioritize the knowledge sources you added for agent knowledge-based queries. So if I don't turn this on, it's much more likely to go out to the web. And what you want it to do is you won't want it to draw from the information that you've got. And boy, this is taking its time. I'm glad I prepared one earlier just in case. Now, writing a good prompt is an art, not a science, and it is an iterative process, as we've discussed. Oh, there we go. I'm glad I prepared one earlier. Let's try again. Let's try one more time. Keep this up. It's not a science, and so why don't we allow AI to create our own prompts? So I'll show you the one I created earlier, but probably the best way to be able to create a prompt, a really good quality prompt, if you haven't done it before, is to go to a large language model of your choice and get it to create a prompt. So can you create me a prompt for Copilot, for my Copilot agent? Can you create me a prompt for my Copilot agent, which is an audit methodology bot? I'll spell this right. I'm not painting myself in a good light, am I? In an audit methodology bot. The audit methodology is added. That's the context that it needs to the information section. Think through how you would, the bot should interpret the methodology when answer. You get my point. But which is I should put an internal audit methodology bot. Okay, answering questions. So let's see it come up with a half decent prompt. And again, you would normally refine this, and you'd want it to make sure that it gave you sufficient 3 C's. So there we go, starting to create a system prompt, and you can see it's very, very detailed. And this is the point that Charlotte and I were making earlier. Too many people put one lines into ChatGPT and expect a good answer out of it. Look at this. This is like having that conversation with our junior people. You're telling them a lot of different stuff, aren't you there? Right. Well, since Microsoft Copilot is going through spitting out errors, why don't I show you the one I prepared earlier? So this is the audit methodology bot here. And so in here is the Milton Keynes audit manual, and I can ask it a question. What is the role of the chief internal auditor? Give it some time. There we go. So
Jamie,
we know it's going. So
when
yes,
you built this, like the one that we've been trying, but it's not loading, you've put in the prompt, like the prompt that you just got from Claude, to describe what you want how you want the bot to work.
Yeah, exactly. So let's go back to that create agent page. What I've done is I've called it something, I've described it, I've put that prompt that we've created in Claude, I've put that prompt in there in the instruction box, I've given it the knowledge, and then literally all I've done is once I've filled out those boxes, this create button will turn blue. I press create, and it's generated my bot that you see today. Simple as that. And then there's another button that goes on that appears once you've done this is deploy across your organization or to select people. So you can either deploy it to just your internal audit team, or even further above if you wanted people across your entire firm to be able to ask questions about your audit methodology, which actually, you know what, you may wish to do so. Charlotte.
Do you want to go back to that prompt and just kind of show us the result that came out from the one you prepared earlier?
There we go. So you can see it is very, very, very detailed.
Sorry. So if you go to the bot you prepared earlier, and we can just get a flavour of what the answer is giving us.
Right, there we go. So what is the role of... Oh, no, it's already there, isn't it? Why don't we do that? There we go. The role of the Chief Internal Auditor is comprehensively outlined in the Milton Keynes document. Here's a summary of their roles. And this is a pre-prepared example. I have read it. It works. So it talks about obviously being a public sector organisation, how it's reviewing of grant certification audits, professional standards, etc. This is pretty good, actually. Now,
and if your methodology goes to what your sample sizes are, or how you define
correct,
how you define risk ratings, you could have anybody in your team putting the prompts into the methodology bot, and it immediately gives you the answers to the questions. I've got a population of this many, how many samples do I need to select and test? Or I'm seeing these types of exceptions. Can you tell me what the root cause might be? And
correct.
It just kind of it's just there. It's the team Q&A function for the methodology.
Yeah, and you can literally create it in 5 minutes. Now, two things to be aware of. Number one is this is no different, essentially. We call this an agent, but don't be scared by what an agent is. That term is misused in a lot of different places. What most people mean by agents are exactly what you can just see here. And it's no real different to be able to essentially having a big prompt and attaching your audit methodology and asking it questions. There is no difference to it. We're just making it easier. Now, you might just say, well, why don't I just write a prompt and put the document in? True. However, that master prompt that you saw before that we've put in, the internal method, that master prompt that we've added in, constrains this model to behave, this agent to behave the way that you want to do. So it will always give you the same quality answers every time, right? That's the important bit. So it means that when your teams are asking the AI the questions, its outputs are guided by what you've already told it to do. So you've got some quality there. And of course, it's just easier than every time doing it. Number two, for those of you that are about to try this, be aware bots like this don't really like text within diagrams and PDFs. So don't always expect it to pick the stuff out of the diagrams. We can talk you through how you would improve that iteratively, for example, saving your PDF as a text file, etc. But loading a PDF is good, but just remember, it can't necessarily see all the text in the pages.
That's a good tip. We've got time now for a few questions, so I'll just go back to presenting my screen. And you can drop your questions in the Q&A function. I see we've already got a couple in there. So let me just pull those out, and please keep adding them. So Jamie, what does the future of AI in internal audit look like, in your opinion?
Pretty much like it does now. I keep being asked this question. So I went to a session in London, round table that I helped chair, and I've heard this a number of times. Oh, we don't know what the audit function is going to look like in 2027, 2028. Well, it's going to look like it does now. Data analytics was going to change the world 20 years ago, and it never did. Yes, the future is going to be different. The future is going to be more along the lines of a lot of this busy work that we do, the admin type tasks are going to disappear, and it's going to allow you to be able to either do more audits, because AI is about effectiveness and efficiency. It's going to allow you to do more audits because you've got the time freed up to do it, or it's going to allow you to understand your stakeholders better, dive into more detail, and get more out of your audits. And so I see nothing but benefit of this. It's a personal opinion. Do I see less auditors in the future? No. Do I see less first-line control staff? Yes, because a lot of their testing will become routine. But I personally think the audit teams of the future will pivot towards being more strategic, because a lot of the testing will be taken for granted and can be done quite easily.
Yeah, and I completely agree. I think, the opportunity that AI gives us is to take on a lot of the time-intensive tasks. You can so that we can focus more. There'll always still be a human element of internal audit. It's a really kind of human, personal type of work that we do. But documenting work papers, RACMs, drafting reports, these things are really time intensive, and often teams find themselves against the clock. So that's where I think there's a huge opportunity for AI to just help get through things quicker, and so that we can identify risks faster ultimately. Another question. When you look at the types of opportunities for AI implementation, so research, documentation, analysis, where do you think we'll see the most value?
I think right now you're going to see the most value in efficiency. So if we think about AI's effectiveness, i.e. the quality of my outputs and how effective my audit function is, and efficiency, I think it's really clear where AI right now is around efficiency. I think we'll see how it develops, how people start to use AI more within their functions, to see how it's going to have that end effect on effectiveness. But I think right now the value is on efficiency, and that's a good thing.
And I'll finish with one question. So we've got a couple of different questions actually. They're all asking about some of the different types of tools. There's one I like here. So using free versions of ChatGPT and Copilot feels like getting back answers that kind of validate thoughts rather than challenging it. Is that a real bias concern? Is there a real bias concern in the paid or organizational versions of those tools as well? Or is that kind of something that's happening in the free tools and the paid versions are better at challenging your thoughts?
It's the same model, and they were originally programmed to be that way. So it's deliberate. Now they have said that being sycophantic outputs are bad, and they are starting to remove them. But you know, the solution to this is to craft your prompts right.
Yeah.
So
and the constraints.
It will agree with you, but if you say to it, I want you to be critical. I want you to be my critical friend, and if I'm saying something wrong, tell me. You will get where you want to get.
And I think that's, like you're saying, the constraints part of the 3 C's. And you can also tell it, if you're asking a question that there is a right and a wrong answer to, or if you've got some good sources you want it to kind of check you against. I often ask for sources with results that I'm getting so that I can follow them through and check them myself, but I know that they're valid. And if you want to pull information from a few kind of reliable sources, you can ask the prompt to do that rather than kind of just give you a chat and pat you on the shoulder. We don't have time for any more questions, unfortunately, but thank you all so much for submitting those. We did mention at the start that this would be the first of a series of AI webinars for internal audit. Our next one is planned to take place early next year, and it's going to explore how internal audit functions can scale from experimentation to enterprise-grade AI capabilities. We've got this QR code that you can scan to register your interest, and you'll get all the details for that. And thank you so much for joining us today. We've really enjoyed running this, and we hope you've got a lot from it. You'll receive your feedback survey with access to the slides and the recording from today as well. And please reach out to us if you've got any questions or want to talk a bit more about AI.